So when you learn about philosophy, you learn a whole bunch of names, but two of those keep on coming up again and again, don't they? One of them is Plato and the other one is Socrates. I thought we'd just take a break from the blackboard teaching just today to talk about those two, because they really in many ways are the founding fathers of Western philosophy and in other ways are almost inseparable. Socrates was the mad man of Athens. Socrates from the district of Alopeik, I don't know how to pronounce that correctly, was famously the ugliest man in Athens. He married a woman called Xanthippe, who was not exactly pleasant to him. She makes one of her only appearances where she tips a piss pot over his head when he sat outside. Asked why he married her, he said, "I wanted to study humanity, so I married its worst." Now, Socrates was a remarkable warrior in his day. He fought in the early days of the Peloponnesian War. The Peloponnesian War was a war between Athens, that he represented, was a foot soldier for really, and Sparta. Now, if you've seen the film 300, you know you don't mess with Sparta. Eventually, right near the end of his life, Athens lost that war with Sparta. Socrates, after retiring from the army, spent his time as a teacher of the Athenian elite. These were the posh boys of Athens, and he was their private tutor. He would talk to them, he would take them around, and he would meet others who claimed to be wise. Why did he do that? Well, he did that. He asked them to demonstrate their wisdom, because the oracle at Delphi had told his friend that Socrates was the wisest man in Athens, and Socrates did not believe him. So, Socrates, to show the god who had spoken to the oracle at Delphi that he was wrong, went around finding the people who claimed to have wisdom and then just asking them a set of questions. Every time he asked them a question, however, their answers seemed wrong. They seemed idiotic, and Socrates didn't hesitate to demonstrate that. He made quite a name for himself. The gadfly of Athens, the annoyance, the irritation, showing all of these wise and great men of Athens how wrong they could be. So when Athens lost the Peloponnesian War with Sparta, things weren't looking too good for Socrates. The Spartans didn't like the Athenian democracy, the only democracy really that was a genuine democracy where everyone voted on every issue, and by everyone I mean the men who were born in Athens, so about 4% of the population. Let's ignore that fact. It was the only kind of proper democracy, and it was completely undermined by Sparta's rule. They set up the rule of the 30, which were 30 Athenian stooges there to do the bidding of Sparta. They started executing the worst political criminals, and then they started executing everybody else. But the democratic underground rose up and kicked out the 30 Athenian elite who had sold their souls to the Spartans. And then they prosecuted anybody who had followed them. Socrates was the teacher of several of them, and he was accused of collusion, put on trial for his life. Plato writes about it. Plato writes about everything we really know about Socrates. There are only 3 sources. The first one's Plato, who we'll talk about a lot. He wrote his dialogues featuring Socrates humiliating those who claim to have wisdom. The next one, Xenophon, nowhere near as smart as Plato. In fact, as Bertrand Russell once said, it would be better to be represented by an intelligent enemy than an idiotic friend, and Xenophon was that idiotic friend. The third one is Aristophanes, the writer of the Clouds. Socrates is on trial for his life, and Plato writes up the account. In a kind of idealised way, Socrates goes from this political figure that's being prosecuted to the representation of the philosopher himself. There, on trial, he is accused of atheism, of making the weaker argument the stronger, and of corrupting the youth of Athens. He's found guilty on all charges, and then told to make his defence speech in order not to be executed. Socrates says, I don't really care if I'm executed or not, because death is one of two things. It's either nothingness, like a great sleep, and who doesn't like a great sleep, or your soul travels elsewhere. Either way seems pretty good to me. If you'd have me live, says Socrates, you wouldn't allow me to practice philosophy anymore. And Socrates says, the unexamined life is not worth living. And so they sentenced him to death. We know those words, the unexamined life is not worth living, because Plato wrote them down. After Socrates' death by hemlock, which paralyzes you, suffocates you, Plato fled Athens for a while and started writing his dialogues. As we talk about Socrates and Plato, I might end up using those names almost interchangeably, because they are essentially interchangeable. There are distinctions, but they're too technical for us to worry about. The thing I want you to take away from this little chat is that there were two parts to that great relationship. The mad teacher, who hated books, by the way, because they didn't speak back, and Plato, the founder of the Academy, one of the first universities in the world, and the author of the great first philosophical text. Socrates and Plato, the beginning of philosophy.